everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, and I'm hoping she can speak here. I mean, she might emulate the film, but Tara's here.
Greetings, citizens.
It would be a very one-sided
You
podcast.
damn dirty apes.
It would be a very one-sided podcast if you were going to emulate Nova and be quiet the whole time.
It might be a good trade-off if I could be Nova except for the voice. I'll be all right.
Yeah, so it's a science fiction movie podcast. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Planet of the Apes based on a couple lines there. So this is actually a vote winner every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Our patrons at $5 and up get to vote between four films. And the winner will do it. So this was another, and the special sort of theme here was that they were all the first movies in franchises, because we were finishing off Jurassic Park. We knew we were going to be done with that, and this is us starting another franchise. So the vote was for which franchise we're going to do, essentially. So this is, from here, this is where we're going to go. So in the franchise, for the record, we're including all 5 original films, the Tim Burton remake, and all 3 of the newer trilogy. So it's quite a long one. It'll take us a while to get through this. And we're not doing it every episode, back to back. We're doing one per month, give or take. And
yeah.
We'll go from there.
And we may have to really hype ourselves up in order to watch the Tim Burton one.
I mean, if by hype ourselves up you mean self-inflict the scene from A Clockwork Orange where we strap ourselves down and have the metal clamps in the eyelids, maybe, yeah.
Not looking forward to it. We'll have to just go back to back with that one and then straight away into the reboot so we can get, okay, at least this came out of it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if Tim Burton didn't crash and burn so badly, maybe we'd never have gotten Rise and Dawn and War, and that would be a travesty. But of course, we're starting with the original 1968 film. We will start spoiler-free. Now, I realise that saying that for Planet of the Apes does raise the question of, does that include the twist ending? Because pretty much everyone knows. I would have loved, because I knew the ending when I watched this for the first time. I would have loved to have seen this, not knowing what the ending was going to be. Because I'll never know if I would have guessed it or figured it out. Or
you remember when you first saw this?
Yeah, because this was one that I saw. I had a period when I was in high school where I was buying up DVDs left and right of classics that I hadn't seen, and I didn't see this as a kid. I saw this. I mean, I was a kid technically because I wasn't 18 yet, but I think I was about 15, 16. I remember I watched this in the same day because I got 4 DVDs in the mail because I ordered them off the internet all the time, and I remember watching this in the same day as Hero, the Jet Li movie directed by Zhang Yimou. It was a good day.
I bet.
That was a good day. So I remember cranking up the sound system and sitting down and just sort of watching movies all day.
That's a long movie too, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's super long. It's over 2 hours, but I don't think it's super long.
Well, a long day of movies. Epics, I would say.
Yes. So I mean, I'm going to avoid talking about the ending until we get to spoilers, which
I think that's fair.
Yeah, just in case for some reason you don't know the ending, at least I'm giving you the choice of not hearing it until spoilers. So we'll go from there, and then we'll talk about how that impacts everything when we get there. But yeah, so the premise of Planet of the Apes, if you somehow are not familiar with it, 3 astronauts, well technically 4, but one never really kind of makes it anywhere, or has a line of dialogue.
I thought we were avoiding spoilers.
This is the premise. This is the opening. This is the setup. Well, what's my spoiler-free description supposed to be? There's 4 astronauts. There's 4 astronauts on a ship. Things happen. I can't tell you anything else. But no, they go into hypersleep. They land on a distant planet. And they wake up and discover they're on a planet that is being run by intelligent talking apes, and that the human beings that are on this planet cannot speak and are kind of wild and treated like animals and that kind of thing. So that is your basic gist. And Charlton Heston, of course, plays the lead character of Taylor, who tries to convince the apes that he's intelligent and so on and so on. And we get a good glimpse into kind of the hierarchy and the lifestyle and the culture of these apes. And of course, like any science fiction, there's a lot of commentary here. What is notable is that this movie is co-written. Now, admittedly, it's based on a novel, so the idea didn't come from this person, but the screenplay is co-written by Rod Serling, who is, it's notable to say that he, of course, is the creator and host of The Twilight Zone and wrote a bunch of those episodes, which is relevant, of course, because if you weren't aware, me and Tara reviewed those classic Twilight Zone episodes. We're about halfway through season 2 right now, and we keep going one a week, and it's good fun, apart from some of the bad episodes. But yes, so that is Planet of the Apes. Well, I told everyone how I first saw this. I mean, were you just really young? Was this something you watched as a kid?
Yeah, I definitely didn't know the ending the first time I saw it, because I watched it as a kid and I watched it before, spoilers were a thing I had to worry about.
Sure.
And they were just movies that were a part of my childhood. Like all of them were.
Yeah,
the original ones.
What's funny is that I know what spoiled it for me. I can actually tell you exactly what spoiled the ending of this movie for me. And it wasn't spoilers on the internet. It wasn't The Simpsons, no. Now, admittedly, I probably saw that episode of The Simpsons with the musical, but I saw it so young that I didn't remember, or it wasn't going to come up. What spoiled it for me that I remembered was there's an episode of Cheers where they're talking about this movie, and they talk about the twist, and I always remembered it coming up. It's actually the same, an episode of Veronica Mars, and I won't say what it is, but it spoiled the ending of Citizen Kane, of all things. so when I saw Citizen Kane finally, I knew what Rosebud was.
Yeah, but that whatever Rosebud thing is in Citizen Kane, it's so like blah anyway.
I wasn't even trying to give my opinion on the movie. I was just pointing out that there's some movies where their endings are just like, considered.
Really? That's it.
Some endings are just considered fair game to spoil. I don't necessarily go with that. I mean, admittedly, I also don't think you should necessarily never have anything reference a famous ending, because it's going to happen from time to time. But I've said in the past that I don't think that an article should ever have the twist ending in the title. Like, someone who's not seen The Sixth Sense should be able to say it's an article about The Sixth Sense. You know what? I'm not going to read that because I've not gone around to watching it yet.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's all. Bit of etiquette and consideration. Anyway, so obviously we've both seen this a bunch of times. Tara, how did you feel watching Planet of the Apes once more?
I love watching this movie. I've watched it many times, and when people tell me they haven't seen it, this is the first thing I put on. I love this movie.
All right, okay. Unconditional praise sounds like what we're going to get for the rest of this. No, I mean, it's a great movie. I like it a lot as well. It's pretty well directed. It's got a lot of great visuals. It's got a lot of those science fiction themes. I don't think it's perfect though. I will later on. I'll give some examples of maybe why I think it's not completely perfect, but I do think it's really great.
I expect that from you, and I'm sure everyone else does.
What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing.
Uh-huh. How dare you? Uh-huh. I've been so offended in all my life. so no, it's not perfect, but it's very strong. It holds up remarkably well, despite the fact that we've got these, ape outfits and like whatnot, which
are
very good for the time. But ultimately,
I think that is something that I remember from watching it more. I don't know, like I watched a lot as a kid, and then I think I skipped it for a while, and then started watching it again in like early adulthood, and just like, you know what, the makeup really does hold up pretty well for the time. Like everybody has like really great movements and little ticks in their facial like movements and features, and it really surprisingly like works, especially if you've seen the sequels.
Yeah,
where they get a lot cheaper.
This is the thing, like it holds up and it doesn't. It holds up in the sense that it works really well, and like you say, they have text, they have they create characters out of it, but it doesn't hold up in the sense that under no circumstance do any of these look real apes like at all. They're suits, the little suits, and
sure,
which is fine. Like it's just obviously it's of its time and that's whatever. But obviously now we can look at the new trilogy and go, holy shit, those look like actual apes. And they're talking and they're doing these things, and it's this next level thing. It almost
justifies all the terrible CGI we have to get there.
Yes. The decades of bad CGI were worth it if the Apes trilogy which arguably might not have been surpassed still, even though War's like 3 years old now.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, so that's not really one of my nitpicks. It's more just a focus thing more than anything. But it's a really solid movie. It's got adventure elements. It's got a lot of science fiction themes. It's got a lot to say. It makes you think about certain things. It's it's doing a lot of really interesting stuff. And it's funny actually. This is the first time I've watched it knowing that Rod Serling had a hand in the script. And what's funny is that the movie opens with Taylor on his own before he goes into the cryo sleep, because the other three are already sleeping, and he's sitting basically doing his captain's log, right? He could have almost started with captain's log, stardate, blah blah blah, but he says he gives this speech, and it sort of sets up some of the themes of the film. He's very cynical, he's very jaded, he's talking about how humanity's kind of in a shit place, and neighbors killing each other and like none of other stuff, and he sort of like talks in the monologue for a while. So I kind of simplified it, but it's kind of this monologue that goes on for a little bit. And honestly, knowing this came at least in part from Rod Serling, I could have imagined two things happening, and both would have felt completely natural in the scene. One is that as he got up and walked over to his cryo sleep, if he just ended with "in the Twilight Zone," that'd have fit. It'd have fit the end of that speech. And then the other one is that as he goes over to his cryo sleep, and then you see him like sort of go to sleep, if the camera like panned over and Rod Serling was sitting there, yeah, and Rod Serling like, meet Taylor, an astronaut at the end of the cosmos.
Submitted for your approval. 4 astronauts leave Earth.
But they find something a little bit different and shocking in the Twilight Zone. Like it just it would fit so well. It really is a long episode of the Twilight Zone in a lot of ways. Yeah. Even down to the ending.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I won't say what it is, but there's been several episodes of the Twilight Zone that essentially have the same twist ending. Mm-hmm. And we're only halfway through season 2, so there's a lot of Twilight Zone in this.
Yeah. I can think of 2. Well, no, 3 right off the bat, actually.
Obviously, it's much higher budget. It's got these big visuals. Like, them wandering around the rocks and the cliffs and stuff near the start. All of that looks gorgeous. They're out in real locations, and it's all that stuff. So, but I mean, hell, even that part reminds me of the episode where it's like the 3 astronauts and they're wandering around.
That was one of the episodes I was thinking of.
Which admittedly also has the same twist, but I was just comparing the first part of it to.
I think we even brought that up in the review.
We probably did.
Yeah.
We probably did. We probably said, no wonder he went on. Honestly, it shocks me that this is based on a book written by someone else, because so much of it's in the Twilight Zone before that book existed. Because the book came out in 1963.
I heard somewhere that Rod Serling had the ape planet be like very much into the future, like in technology wise, like they would have flying like cars and have like a whole civilization that was very technology based, but it was just not in a budget to do. I wonder if I don't know. I love so much how like just primitive the planet looks and like the visual of the landscape, that I think if you added in all that stuff, it would maybe be a little too hokey or a little too cheesy.
With the effects that they would have, available to them in 1968, yeah, probably. It probably would be too hokey. Plus, it would also kind of hurt it in the sense that a lot of the film's plot's about the Forbidden Zone and this secret area. Like, you wouldn't really be able to do that if it was a civilization that spawned an entire globe and they had like flight and they were traveling like country to country and all that sort of stuff. I feel like a lot of the plot of this movie wouldn't work in that context.
It's like having a Superman game where all of a sudden there's a invisible wall that you can't fly past.
That's a quality example, yes. But yeah, it very much it benefits, and I think it actually adds to the themes that the culture is kind of in this relatively primitive place. Primitive to us, primitive to our standard of living.
Well, there's a whole lot of allegories here going on, which is one of the reasons why makes it like a great science fiction movie to watch, because it's so much of it is just a conversation piece.
Yeah, there's a lot of allegories to class, to military, to religion. There's a lot of
Scope's monkey trial here. There's a lot of Inherit the Wind, if you've ever seen that.
I have not, but there's also a lot of specific stuff to the time period. The ending obviously hints to one of the bigger things that were going on at the time, but also even just so it's actually kind of interesting this comes out in 1968, because one of the things that I kind of stuck out to me watching it again this time is that a lot of this is about the new younger generation, like, trying to change things, and the older generation not really being, like, how should I say, accepting of that. You know, I mean, current day, you could call it the baby boomers versus the millennials, right? Like, if you want to do it, right? Just to sort of put it in modern parlance.
Yeah.
But
sorry, I live next to a racetrack.
yes, I hear. But like, and I think that's there. And it's what's funny about it is that it kind of paints Charlton Heston, and he's almost genius casting in the sense that, you know, if you look at the films he'd done before this, you're looking at your Ben-Hur, your Ten Commandments. He's kind of this prototypical, like, all American, sort of straight white male lead. And
they could have put John Wayne in the lead also. Yeah,
they could have. I mean, having watched one of his movies now, he would be very boring to watch, but yes, they could have in theory done that. Yes,
he's not always boring. I like him as Stagecoach, and I like was it Rooster Cogburn, True Grit.
Yeah, well, I watched Rio Bravo and I was bored to absolute tears, despite the fact that plot sounded great on paper.
He's got some good war movies too. It's a good movie. I think it has a bridge in it. Like movies with bridge in the title.
What was my point? You let me down a path. Oh yes, I was talking about the generational thing. So, but you have this thing that's represented both within the apes themselves, and the idea of this younger generation wanting to, like, show and expand and do new things, and the older generation that are against it. But then you also have, on a separate level to that, the idea of Heston's character being part of the old generation, and the apes representing the new generation after things have changed, and being like shocked and appalled at what they've done, and almost to the point where you could say that maybe this could even be seen as, like, almost, I don't know if I say propaganda, but like something that is in favor of the old guard rather than the new guard. Except, of course, the ending throws the wrench into that says, no, the old guard kind of did this, like, you know, there's multiple levels to it, and
yeah, definitely.
It's kind of a critique of basically any culture who gets too much hubris, too much, like, thinking we are the best, our way is the correct way, there's no challenging it, and it should never be challenged.
This is like if Captain Kirk came to a planet of apes and said, you're doing it all wrong. But it's like you're looking at the apes as an allegory for man, and Kirk is here to tell you how we've moved past that. But then, like you said, the ending, like, throws right. It's hard to talk about without the ending.
Exactly. Exactly. But that's kind of what makes it work so well, is that it's right. The apes are kind of representing man, but then man is also representing man, and they both, because the whole point is ultimately is they're kind of the same.
Man, like the Star Trek person who's like,
yes,
no, we've moved past this, like, this stage. Like, you shouldn't oppress people. You shouldn't have class. Like, you're not better than others. There's also a lot of, like, well, no,
to be fair, Heston's character isn't from a Star Trek like world, though. He's from a world that's much more steeped in everything, because his opening speech basically says that Earth's a shithole.
Yeah, that's true. and he has a line about, like, the woman that they brought with him who was supposed to be their Eve. It's kind of gross.
Yeah, he says, yeah, not only that, he calls her the most precious piece of cargo they had.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not very Star Trek-y in that sense.
That's true.
Not very Star Trek-y, which was airing when this came out.
Right, but it does seem like he looks down on the apes because of the way that their society is run and how they treat other species on their planet. But it is more like a Star Trek parallel in that he sees them as, we've already gone past this in humanity.
Well, I would actually dial it even further than that and say that this is more like an offense that this thing that he's like, you know, apes are supposed to be primitive and he's supposed to be higher up in the not the food chain per se, because I mean, if a man takes on an ape in a one-on-one fight, the ape's winning. But like, the ape is definitely winning. But he sees himself as superior, so there's actually kind of almost this arrogance, and because I think naturally, because he's the human, right? We as a human audience, because we're the only audience, we naturally kind of side with him, and we're kind of hoping, because there's a whole section of the movie where he can't speak because he's been injured, and you want him to finally say something, so they'll all know that he's not an idiot, that he is smart, that he is intelligent, and prove. But here's the thing: is that his arrogance in thinking that he's better from the get-go actually kind of proves that he's just as bad as them in a lot of ways, because how they are treating humans is just like he would expect to treat an ape.
Exactly.
So
there's actually a lot of like animal rights. Like I think the first of the reboot films does this a lot better. Those obviously, where they just literally have apes being in cages, being experimented on like we do all the time. But this one puts humans in that position, and there's a lot. What are you smirking at?
I just the way you said that as if it wasn't the royal we. I was like, wait, does male Fuzz have a like a lab somewhere where we're testing apes like we do all the time? Yeah.
We are an experiment, but not in that way.
Yes.
But yes, the humanity does.
All right, actually, one of the other points I was going to make when I said about the film came out in 1968 is that this is actually right at the time when Hollywood was shifting, because it's actually a year after this that Easy Rider came out. No, I'm not a fan of Easy Rider. I think it's actually shockingly boring when I tried to watch that movie. But
everybody's dad is.
Yeah. So what that kind of represented, there was this kind of shift, and that's when independent cinema became a thing, and the Hollywood system was no longer the only game in town. And I think it's very interesting that this movie is a Hollywood movie. It's got a Hollywood budget. It feels like a Hollywood, even just the way the plot works feels very, even though it's got all these themes in it, it's still very Hollywoody in how it presents itself.
It's shot like one. It's it's very CinemaScope. It looks like a Western, you know.
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting that this movie's themes are about like fearing the new guard and fearing the change, and it's right at the exact time when that was about to happen in Hollywood, where these new filmmakers would make films in new ways and challenge things.
Right. It actually is similar to the themes in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I think takes place at around this time.
You're right. Yeah, 1969. Because because long before it had a title, it was literally the Tarantino 1969 project for like a long time.
Right. Yeah. So that makes sense. Like that was a huge theme in that film, was old Hollywood being replaced and with these, hippie cinemas.
Yeah, and this, of course, is not about cinema being replaced in any way. It's more broad than that. It's just about everyone, and it's just about society. But it fits into that. I think it's actually really funny thinking about it that way. That it actually comes out right as that's happening, and it's not that Hollywood cinema went away. Obviously, it had to adapt and change to it, and it wasn't the the only dog or the only game in town anymore. But it did have to react to it. It did have to react to the fact that, hey, there's this new exciting cinema, and it's what led to some of these younger filmmakers then getting their chance. Like, I don't know if without the new independent scene, do you get a Spielberg getting a chance to rise up and make things like Jaws in '75 and so on. So Or Duel. Well, Duel was very soon after this. That was a TV movie.
I know. That's wonderful.
Duel's very good, yes. I saw it for the first time just last year. Very good. It was basically Jaws, but with a truck.
Yes.
I almost want them to go back.
The truck is the monster.
And just use John Williams' score from Jaws on Duel. Just put that music in there.
That big oil rig. That rusty oil rig with all the smoke coming out of it.
I think it would work. I think you would even have to
And then he eats the bus of kids, the school bus.
Yes.
That would be great.
Exactly. There actually is a car with a mind of its own movie, which is basically actually a rip-off of Jaws, because it follows the structure of Jaws to a T. Because you know that scene in Jaws where it's when they know something's up, but the mayor's refusing to close everything. So there's the scene where everyone runs up to the beach and everyone's on the beach trying to stay away from the shark because the shark's too close. There's that scene, but it's the car. But it's the exact same mechanics where they're all behind the fence and they all run for the fence. So it's the same thing. But it's called The Car, and it stars James Brolin, Josh Brolin's dad.
All right.
And I own it on Blu-ray because I'm that kind of weirdo.
Is it horror or science fiction?
It's probably more horror, but I mean,
That's all right. You guys can have it.
It's a car with a mind of its own, so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's more horror. I mean, Christine is a horror film.
Christine definitely is. Yes. Yeah. So, yes, but you know, I think it's fascinating where it fits into cinema history, where it fits into culture at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you've got all these other things going on because this is right around the time, of course, of the Vietnam War. It's also right in the middle of the Cold War and the nuclear arms race. So there's so many like ideas, so many themes, so many things sort of going on. Which, if I was going to get to a complaint, is that there's actually maybe a little too many in the film. If I was to critique it a little bit, it would be that in the middle of the movie, it starts bringing in all this religion and all this science versus religion stuff, and it's all really good stuff. But I just almost wonder if there's almost just too many things in the pot. Like, just maybe simplify the taste a little bit.
Like, I don't think so. Like, I don't mind, like, just here's a look at man, look at all the parallels.
Sure.
I don't think so. I think I like how layered it is. I enjoy watching the movie each time and going and focusing more on one theme over another, and I don't know, watching it play out. It's like maybe if it was an episode of The Twilight Zone, you would only have one of those themes and not all of them. But you know, it's 2 hours. It's good.
Yeah, I guess. It's one of those things where, like, I appreciate the religion versus science debate, but you ultimately didn't really necessarily need to have that for the ape who's what's his name, Dr.
Zeus.
Zeus, there you go, thank you. Dr. Zeus, like, you didn't necessarily need the religious aspect for him to like denounce everything. He could denounce everything without the religious element, but I didn't. Even though I do think it works, and it does work very well. I'm just trying to give an example of how you could sort of focus it a little bit and leave one of those elements out. But yeah, so but that's kind of it though. I don't have a whole lot. Maybe, I don't know, Heston's character, like you say, he's got the odd line here or there where it's kind of like, yeah, all right.
Is that because you don't like Heston though, because of like personal reasons, or?
No, I mean I don't particularly like Heston in real life, or I didn't, I guess, because you know.
Well, sure, I don't either, but I mean, I love Charlton Heston, old like Hollywood films. I love 10 Commandments. I'm not a religious person, never been a part of my life, but I love that movie.
I've never seen 10 Commandments. If I could get the 4 hours back I wasted on Ben-Hur, I would.
Yeah, I've never. Ben-Hur was always one of those films that it would come on TV and I would always catch it like after it started, and it was before a time that I would record plan to watch it. So,
but to answer your question, I think Taylor is intentionally kind of the way he is, because I think it's part of the character.
He introduces himself as that kind of guy.
Yeah, he's
just so arrogant, and he gets stuff done, and he's definitely a leader because he'll just step over anyone to get there.
But I think knowing what Heston's like in real life though does add kind of an underlayer to it. You know, when he's saying certain things or doing certain things, you know, it's especially hard not to, like, when he grabs one of the guns and says, "I'm pretty good with this thing." It's hard not to sort of chuckle a little bit because of his whole NRA background and you know they can pry it from my cold dead hands. It's hard not to think of that stuff, and it's not something you should judge the movie for necessarily, but it's something that's just impossible just not to enter your head. If you know that stuff, it's hard not to think about it a little bit as he's saying certain things. So it's not a complaint so much as it's just more of a, you know, like a footnote observation, because it's hard not to or pretend that doesn't exist. But you know, that's what it is. In many ways, this is probably his ideal leading lady in Nova. You know, a love interest who doesn't speak. A
beautiful young woman who doesn't speak.
Yeah.
Is she like the most beautiful person ever on screen? Like, oh my god, I was so amazed by her. You don't have to answer that.
I was trying to think what would be a funny, like, no, because this person exists. But yeah, okay, fine. You don't want me to make my joke, okay? I'll move on.
Yeah, she is crazy beautiful, and she was having an affair with one of the producers of the film and got pregnant. So there are scenes where she is like visibly pregnant in the movie, and they had to like cover it up and hide it because she was so skinny, so she was starting to show pretty early.
and she's also wearing like a cloth, basically.
Yeah, she's wearing that.
So I have a question. Like, I don't mean to belittle her achievement of getting the role here, but like, did she get the role because of her affair with the producer, or was that something that happened after?
What we know about movie producers, I don't know necessarily that it was her fault.
I mean, that's also true. I mean, because you said affair, which implied consent, but I mean,
I don't know. Like he was married, I think.
He was married, okay.
At the time, yeah. And then knocked up the actress. And they were married for like 9 years and had 2 kids. Didn't work out, obviously, but
yeah. I mean, there's nothing good about that story. Nothing good about it. And and the sad part, I mean, the sad part is that I like we say that the way movie producers can be, like, I have to imagine, though, to give it a name, the Weinsteining, if you will. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine that was even worse the further you go back. I don't imagine it was better in 1968 than it was later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
there are like news clippings of, I think, Vivien Leigh, because she left Hollywood for a while because she said she just couldn't handle all like what the producers expected of her. And this is from, she was in Gone with the Wind and what is it? That Marlon Brando movie, Stella.
Streetcar Named Desire?
Yeah, Streetcar. And, that was old Hollywood, and it was happening then.
Yeah. Oh,
where she said she couldn't like bear to be in Hollywood anymore because she was tired of everyone grabbing her ass all the time.
Doesn't surprise me. Sadly, it doesn't surprise me. But I mean, I guess it adds, because one of the things that stuck out to me in this actually is the way they kept referring to her as the female. Like even once he was technically in love with her, if you want to call it that. Yeah. Because even that has this cynical, like, sort of dark undertone to it, where he's kind of looking at her like through the cage at one point, and he's like, I never really loved anyone. I was plenty of love making, plenty of women, but never at love. And it's hard not to be like, yeah, so you're falling for the one who can't speak back. Like, I don't know. It's hard not to take this and that.
I never really buy that he loves her. I don't know. I never bought that relationship as,
well, yeah, like, now do
she obviously really loves him, but like he cares about her because he tries to save her.
Yeah, but does he care about her in the same way that you care about a pet? Because it kind of feels like that at times.
Yeah, it really does.
It comes across as that at times.
Maybe it's because she was, sleeping with the producer, and Charlton Heston didn't want to get too close.
I mean, maybe yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah, so I hope Linda Harrison's time wasn't that rough. I'll just say that. That's the actress. Who, by the way, despite the fact that she has a decent amount of screen time, she's like 8th down the cast list.
Well, she has no lines.
I mean, technically that's true, yes. Which is actually how they define.
I hope she got paid.
How much an extra gets paid is actually dictated if they have a line or not. So I'd hope that when you have a role like that's quite prominent but it has no lines, I hope they don't like have like well, technically
you're an extra, honey.
Yeah, technically you're an extra. This is good exposure.
Indeed.
All right, well, I didn't expect to go down that dark path, but I guess we should finally stop dancing around things. I will give the spoiler warning. Before we start the spoiler section, though, I will thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to David Shaw, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, and Tyler Hess. They're all patrons at $20 or above, which means they get producer credits. Although, unlike the producers in this film, they're not coercing...
Don't make assumptions.
Anyone. Yes. They're not movie producers, they're podcast producers. Podcast producers are much nicer, mainly because they have almost no power. But Tara, they can be patrons for much less than that. Why don't you tell them all about
Indeed. If you enjoy watching us review science fiction movies, then you should check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/MildlessTV. And donating as little as $1 per month will get you bonus episodes of the Ace. So you can watch us review more Mystery Science Theater adjacent films, some actual Mystery Science Theater films, such as, which one have we done that's like Mystery Science Theater? Oh, we did the Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. We did some David Carradine ones like Future Force and what was it? Not Death Race. It was Death Sport. So yeah, and if you're wondering where the Transfer Saga is, we are working our way through those on the bonus episodes. There's quite a back catalog. So
you left that till last on purpose.
And I did. Because you're doing a thing and I hate it. And if you donate up to $5, then you get even more. You get all that, plus you get to vote on what we're going to watch once a month. And you'll get these episodes a week early. So check it out.
It was almost perfect. It was almost perfect.
I hate you so much.
You get the episodes a day early, not a week early, a day early.
Oh. When did it switch to a day?
Ages ago.
Oh. Well, you'll get episodes of The Twilight Zone. If you're watching Planet of the Apes, then you probably like The Twilight Zone. You get those a week early for your $5 donation.
Hey,
thank you very much.
First of all, I love that you say thank you very much at the end. Now, like, honestly, after the travesty that was that version you did in like a Twilight Zone an episode or two ago, where you just completely buckled and said everything wrong, that was pretty good, but it was almost perfect. It was almost perfect.
I felt it was pretty good.
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, so full spoilers then for Planet of the Apes. So yeah, it's Earth the whole time.
Oh my god, I was wrong. It was Earth all along.
I would love to see it without knowing, because watching it, knowing it, there's so much foreshadowing.
Yeah.
I
shot an arrow into the air. It's third from the sun. It's the invaders. All these Twilight Zone episodes we watched.
I love how you're just spoiling multiple episodes of Twilight Zone in one fell swoop.
Yep.
Oh, I love it. So
we're in the spoiler-free section. No, spoiler section. I had it right the first time.
Yes. Not for everything ever made, though. Let me just reiterate that. But there was some controversy in the Bloodshot review. I just want to keep that clear.
Oh, where I said Guy Pearce always plays a villain.
And you started giving examples.
Yeah. Memento. That's not really a spoiler.
It's such a good movie, and you're spoiling how it ends. It's such a good movie.
The spoiler section. I'm going to spoil it every episode.
It's not. Do I have to give a spoiler warning for Memento every episode? It's like, so full spoilers for Planet Apes. Also Memento, just in case.
Also, just say like full spoilers. We don't know what we're going to bring up.
You can't do that. You can't just spoil anything at random.
Make sure you watch everything before you watch it.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, everything is Earth the whole time. This is actually just the future. Actually, I've got a question, right? So they're in like cryosleep for like 2,000 years, and they wake up with beards, which makes sense. However, if hair kept growing for 2,000 years, the beards would surely be like unreasonably long.
Well, sure, but so would their nails, and so would they would have aged too, which they do. They aged slowly though.
No. I concur. That's also an issue, but
because the guy has gray hair that they comment
yes,
on also. But
they could just not have anything happen, and I'll just buy that in cryosleep it all pauses, it all freezes, so nothing happens. Yeah. But I think
they're just implying that it just happens a lot slower.
Yeah, but
I think they even say that.
But they go out of their way to give them beards that are just kind of like, relatively. I mean, maybe
I'd say they're like 6 months of growth.
Yeah, we'll just work through the movie, I guess. I was going to make a point about the ending, but I'm sure I'll make it when we actually.
Let's get to the butts. There's so much butts in the opening.
So much butts?
Well, I mean, once they get to the planet.
Yeah. When they get to the little spring that they find, there's a lot of butts. Hell, actually, if you're watching this in at least HD,
there's some down.
There's legit. This is look. PG. It's a PG, and there's straight up dick in this movie.
Yeah, there's down.
Straight up dick. It's a wide shot, so it's not like super in your face, but there's definitely some dick in there.
Does that DVD cover spoil the movie?
It doesn't actually. I've critiqued this a lot because a lot of the DVDs do have the ending on the cover. This one does not. This one's just Cornelius and some other stuff at the bottom. Does the back spoil it though? Because that would equally be just as bad. No, it doesn't. The back doesn't either. So, because the box set I had on DVD was most definitely the front cover was just the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just.
Yeah, I had a friend who had that too, and I was like, what the hell?
just put a spoiler on the. I mean, that's like putting spoilers.
You maniac! Why would you put that on there?
Spoilers for The Sixth Sense before I make this joke, right? Full spoilers for The Sixth Sense.
We're in the spoiler zone. I mean, everyone knows.
I'm considerate, all right? That'd be like if The Sixth Sense DVD cover literally just said on the front, he's a ghost. The Sixth Sense. Or maybe they put like Bruce Willis on it, but he's sort of like grey and faded as if he's like a vapor or something.
Right.
Like something that makes it really obvious. Bruce Willis is a ghost in this movie. Oh dear. Anyway, so we mentioned the monologue at the start, which sets things up, and the day counter and all the rest of it, and we get some stunning camera work. We get like a POV shot of the front of the ship as it's like spiraling out of control, and it's like spinning and dancing and whatnot. And we get a whole section where they're waking up. The water's coming in because they've landed in the water, and the woman, whatever her name was, because I can't remember.
Stuart.
There you go. Sure. There was a crack in her containment, and she just grew old and died in her sleep.
Yeah.
And she's long dead. And they're like, "Oh no, the woman's dead. What are we going to do now?" What are we going to do?
Well, it quickly becomes very homoerotic.
Yes. There's a lot of homoerotic tension.
Like, well, the woman's gone. So.
Yeah. Yeah, what else are you going to do? Because there's a lot of like them traipsing around. There's the famous moment where he laughs, because this is a gift that I have used many a time, which is the camera sort of flying over him, going up to the sky as he laughs maniacally, which he does so at the planting of the little American flag in the ground. It's such a good little moment, because again, it's his jaded cynicism. He has a debate with Landon here as well. Because Landon was a scientist and he wanted to like discover and like grow old, be older than anyone else and all the rest of it. And he kind of picks apart at his reasoning, thinking he's better, because of course he does, because he's Taylor and he's Charlton Heston and he's all these things. There's some nice.
He's the hubris of man.
He is, yes.
In a man form.
In man form. Well, there is some nice visuals here though. There's some really good stuff. There's actually like a really, I don't know if this is an intentional thing, but there's like a shot that mirrors a shot at the end of the movie, because at the end of the movie, one of the big shots when he finds the Statue of Liberty is that it's sort of looking at him through two of the spikes. I don't know what you call them, the thing around the head.
Crown?
Yeah, but I mean specifically the two of the actual parts of it, right?
The points.
Yeah, the points, right. He's in between the 2 points. There's a shot here where they're going down the water, and it's like in like the middle of a big ravine. And it's this beautiful shot with these, the rock faces on either side and them in the middle. It's a very similar, I don't know, when I saw it at the end, the idea of him being in between these two parts kind of reminded me of that shot from earlier on in the movie. I appreciate that. But anyway, so some good visuals here, and of course they eventually find a spring, and they strip down immediately and run in. So there's a lot of ass, and then when the humans that show up steal their clothes and run off with their supplies, they go running after them, completely butt-ass naked. So there is the aforementioned dong, as Tara wants to point out. And we find these humans, and they're eating fruit and some vegetables, and they can't speak.
And they're totally silent. Yeah.
Totally
it's
silent.
Kind of weird.
And Heston's eyeing up Nova. He's already spotted her.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, that's a love interest. We've nailed that right at the start. And
at least she's not immediately in love with him. It's not like a Stargate thing.
True. At least that would make more sense here, though, given how primitive they are. Where, okay, it would just be there's attraction on a raw, primitive level. That's it.
Yeah. Well, that sort of plays out. He protects her, and she just eventually is just like, okay, you're my mate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Zira's hoping they'll mate. So
yeah, exactly.
she puts him in the cage because she wants to.
Good thing she knows which one the hot one is.
Well, because even she's like, "Oh, I got you a gift." Bright eyes, because that's what she calls him, because he's got bright eyes. And gives him Nova. But I appreciate that they, even though the movie's called Planet of the Apes, even though if you're seeing this, you're watching this movie, you know that we're going to get apes. I do like that it kind of plays with the like building up to seeing them for the first time. We sort of see glimpses of what they're doing first.
I like the scarecrow element that you see first, like the they look kind of like Blair Witch symbols or something up on top of the hill, but they look, creepy. Like they would. I don't know if they were made by humans or by apes to act as like a warning, but it's a cool visual too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the first sign of life in the movie before you see the humans first, and then you get the really cool reveal of the apes.
Yeah, you see them sneaking around first, and then of course all the stuff we mentioned, and then everyone kind of gets captured. Some humans get killed, and this is what leads us to our, and he obviously, it's as he's in the little cart that's going to get pulled by a horse that he hears two of the apes talking, because they're taking a photo. They're like hunters taking their photos of their game that they've shot. So like all of that
Another
stuff. Another commentary, yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of the hunting stuff, but that moment definitely felt very specific. Yeah. So, but of course, this is where the movie really gets going, though, because this is where he's in the cage. He can't speak because he gets he get like grazed in the neck, so he can't. His vocal cords are damaged. He can't speak, and there's a little bit of frustration here for me because there's so many points where he could do a lot more stuff with his hands to make it clear what he's trying to say to Zira, because he's sort of like reaching for the pad and the pen at one point because he wants to write something down, and all I could think in my head was, well, just do this with your hand to make it clear that you want to write something, and she'll probably give it to you willingly. But instead he sort of grabs at it.
Yeah. Well, he's in a panic state.
Sure, we'll go with that. But I mean, minor nitpick. It's just one of those things I was watching.
I like that he does like try to like write on the ground and stuff too, but everything else is kind of getting in his way.
Yeah, people don't see it. It's that kind of like satisfyingly frustrating element of like, it's like he almost had them convinced, and then it gets scrubbed away because Zola thinks, oh no, I'll clean this for you.
Oh, I can write things too.
Yeah, let me. So this is kind of where we get to learn about the ape society. We learn that there's kind of a hierarchy based on the different types of apes. The chimpanzees being kind of the bottom of the ladder, as it were. And then we have the gorillas are kind of the guards and the military force kind of idea. We don't really get every type of ape in this movie. There's basically just the three types, but like it definitely sets up the class system. It sets up kind of this society, which, because even Taylor points out later, because later on when like Dr. Zaius is talking about how tell us why, because he's trying to prove that he's not intelligent once he's speaking, like tell us why apes are created equal, and he kind of smirks and goes, some apes are more equal than others, it would seem, which obviously is a very poignant statement to make.
Yeah, like the chimpanzees seem like they're like the working class, and then the gorillas are like the military, and then of course the people who make the lawgivers are all the orangutans. At least that's the three that we can see at this, whatever this society is.
Yeah, obviously the new trilogy introduced some more types for variants, but all this stuff is fascinating because it kind of leads to like a lot of the actual science fiction ideas of the movie, particularly the debating of like, should Taylor have rights, and anything that challenges the idea that his scripture, because this is where the religion comes into it, because every time they suggest that, because it's Cornelius is engaged to Zira, and he is the one who's a bit of a scientist and archaeologist, and he's found this dig site out in the Forbidden Zone, and he's convinced that there was civilization here before apes, which would sort of go against their Bible, their scripture, which says that apes this, blah blah blah. And Zaius, every chance he gets, he's like, no, anything that suggests that the scripture's wrong is blasphemy, and we cannot accept it. This is ridiculous. We can't accept any of these things, and this human can't have come from somewhere else, and he couldn't have been this, and he couldn't have been that. All the rest of it, and to the point where it gets really frustrating. Like, watch every time it comes up, and he just poo-poos it every time.
Yeah. Well, there is that scene in the trial where I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but like there is it almost plays for laughs. Like the three orangutans are doing the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. I don't want to call it a meme because it's much older than that, but they're doing that because they're hearing all this blasphemy from what Cornelius is suggesting.
Yeah.
That, and then the whole time, like Taylor is saying that this is the planet where apes clearly evolved from humans.
Yes, which is, obviously, and it's these things, like all this stuff is like surely some audiences predicted the ending from this stuff, because like a lot of this talking about this pre-civilization and how it used to be, men were smarter or whatever. Like surely this stuff had to be ringing some bells for some people.
Sure, but maybe at the time, like they just weren't expecting twist endings. Like you just sort of accept that, when you do an alien movie, of course they're going to speak English because all aliens speak English. Otherwise, you can't write a movie. So we have the luxury of having all of those twist endings already before we watch a new film. So.
Well, you say that, but what if they'd seen some Twilight Zone?
Now they're tropes, Yeah, that's true.
If they'd seen some Twilight Zone, they might have had more of an inkling.
I can't really think of very many movies that had like a twist ending, with the exception of maybe Hitchcock before. Like, yeah,
Hitchcock definitely did. I'm sure there's some. Maybe it was less common, but I'm sure there was some. So obviously there's a bunch of stuff here in this middle section of the film where he's trying to write and eventually does, and Zira wants to talk to him, and he kind of like it just sort of takes him back to like her apartment or whatever you want to call it, and with Cornelius they're like sort of trying to figure things out, and Cornelius is very doubtful. He doesn't want to believe this. This is crazy, but he can't argue with the fact that he's clearly talking to them via writing. And he does make a big escape though at one point and makes a run for it. We get a big chase sequence through like a museum area.
It's like a natural history museum.
And this is where we see that Dodge has been basically stuffed and put in here. Although I will say this, there's one moment where you can clearly see the actors who are playing the supposedly stuffed humans shaking as they try to stay still.
Even Dodge, you can see it a little bit.
Yeah.
He's pretty good though.
Yeah, I think he was better than some of the other ones, because there's like two or three people, and one was like holding a stick or something, and that one was especially noticeable because the stick was moving up and down. But this is where it builds up to the famous moment where he's like, get your paws off me, you damn dirty ape. Which, do you know what's so funny is this is a good moment, and it's really satisfying seeing the ape's reaction, but it almost like suffers now in hindsight, because for me this is now just the setup for the even better version of this that we get in another film later. Because I love the callback to this later, but it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. And of course this is what leads to the trial, and I was even thinking of, obviously this didn't exist yet, but I was even thinking of Measure of a Man a little bit when they were talking about should Taylor have rights. It's like, no, he's not an ape, he should have no rights. Yeah, but you're trying him for something, so if he's accused and he's in court, then surely he should have rights to go along with that.
yeah Smart.
Yeah, that is smart.
I don't think that was even brought up in Measure of a Man, that argument.
That's true. Yeah Picard missed the beat by not bringing that up. You're right. Yeah Well, that's it now, because Dale wasn't accused of something. It was more determining what he was classified as.
Sure.
So I don't think that argument would have worked in that sense. But yeah,
you're right. He's the accused. He's standing on trial, and it is a little strange. I think everybody acknowledges that this is not something that should exist, but we should, even though we all acknowledge that he's speaking and he's a human, that we'll just write this off as some weird mutation and call it a day, like wipe our hands clean, like, and then it'll never happen.
And the corruption element of this, of course, is that Zaius, when he wants to see Taylor on his own, and it's like, okay, we've basically decided that you're blasphemous and we're going to lobotomize you. But I can make that.
But he talks to him like he's like I don't want to say humanely, but like he talks to him like he's a real person, that he's equal with him. There's
even a moment where Taylor thanks him for calling him Taylor, because up until this point he's been, he's referring to him as an animal or referring to him as the beast or something, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But he calls him Taylor at one point, and he actually thanks him for it. But this scene is very interesting because this is kind of the scene that implies that Zeus probably knows some of the truth. Maybe not exactly, but he clearly knows more than he's letting on, and he wants to know where more of. If there's more of this kind that can speak, if there's more of these intelligent humans, he wants to know about them so he can do something about it. He doesn't want to
know like what planet he came from. He wants to know where he came from on their planet.
Yeah, this idea that he wants to be able to deal with them, and he wants to sort of snuff out any idea that the ape kind isn't like the perfect kind that was blessed by their god to be the superior animal, and all these things. So you get this idea of corruption, and you know, like how often do we see things where it feels like the government is just lying, or they're just covering something up, or they're just
aliens,
very blatantly as well. Aliens. Wasn't the example I was?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it wasn't the example I was going with, but yeah, sure. So you have this idea that creeps in, and I really like, and you know, I think a lot of the movies we talk about, we tend to like go through it kind of like almost scene for scene. This one I'm not quite doing that with, because I feel like each scene for scene on its own isn't that. You know, I feel like taking more as the ideas as a whole is far more interesting with this one. I don't know if like the scenes themselves, like, because I'm in this middle part of the movie, I'm kind of just bundling it together and saying, here's kind of the ideas that it introduces, here's the core premises that it has, and
I wonder if it's because like all of the sets look exactly the same, so it kind of like blurs together. The scenes do. It
may be. It's difficult to remember the order, because ultimately it leads to Zira and Cornelius getting their nephew to break out Taylor, who actually
before he gets lobotomized. Yeah.
Who introduces this idea of the younger generation, and that's something that it becomes more kind of interface, because I think. Obviously, once we know it's the same planet and that the apes are, in a way, the younger generation, in a sense, who replaced the humans because of humans' own hubris and, you know...
The maniacs.
Apocalyptic mistakes that they've made. But no, it clearly brings these themes back into the fold, where he says, yeah, never trust anyone over 30, and things like that. You know? The young new ideas, and... Like, it's like, because if anything, the arc of the film for Taylor is almost that he accepts that the younger generation has to challenge the old guard, realizing that in this civilization especially, like, these younger scientists and this nephew, like, they have to challenge the establishment, because the way it is just broken and unfair and biased, and like almost goes unquestioned, where anything they say is just taken as law, is taken as scripture, again, to use that word. Which is, you know, a critique on religion, it's a critique on all these things, it's a critique on the state and religion being mixed together.
Yeah, I think the ending really is because of the twist ending, we get like the hubris of Taylor, even where he talks down to the generation before him, or like he's talking down to the apes because he thinks that he's better than them. But really, like, he's part of that generation that made everything worse.
Yeah, no, that's definitely there. And he even, like, you know, says, hey, do you want to come with me, as I try and, like, find a potential, you know, forest or jungle beyond the forbidden zone. And they're like, nah, like, as flawed as this is our culture, and we have to try and fix it, we have to try and change it, rather than, you know, just abandon it. Which is essentially what he did. You know, he literally just abandoned Earth and left on a spaceship, instead of trying to help fix it and sort of like I guess
3 Adams and 1 Eve.
I guess in a weird way, you could kind of like draw a parallel there to someone who just tries to stay out of like any sort of politics. They're just like, oh no, I don't want to be involved because it's too much to consider. I don't want to talk about any of it. But you can almost.
It's too difficult to change things, so let's just start a new planet.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. But he goes off with Nova, and of course finds the Statue of Liberty and realizes that, oh wait, we did this. And you know, not that, I mean, I'm not saying if he'd stayed, like, he would have been the one voice that convinced everyone to like lay down their nuclear arms and not annihilate the planet, but the idea being that just that, yes, like, you abandoned it, and some point after you left, Like, humanity did not get better. It deteriorated to this point, and boom, it went, and everything's all gone.
You're not holier than thou. You're not better than these apes. You know.
No.
In theory, like, one of the things that I love about the ending is the added scripture from the lawgiver that Dr. Zaius gives to Cornelius to read about how, like, man is dangerous. Like, yeah, he's more than just what the humans that you see who are primitive, and you have to keep them in check, or they will, they will destroy anything if they get some power. And I love that part of the ending.
Yeah, I think what I like about that is that again kind of sides with the idea is that it doesn't even have to be true. The idea that like they're in power and they're so scared, that the idea that they wrote into their scripture that no, we have to keep this other race down, because if they get too much power, it might challenge our power. So we have to like treat them as if they're the boogeyman. And I'm not going to say that that's very relevant necessarily right now as we record this. Well,
you said race and not species, so
as in the human race.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
As in the human race, but I think there's definitely those parallels there, and shockingly still relevant, very relevant in fact as we record this.
Yeah.
So there's definitely those layers there, and I loved the moment. Although I do have to call it out. I'm sure I said this the last time I talked about this movie, but the battery in this doll is like super powered.
Well, maybe it's like a wind up. Or like one of the strings that you pull.
Okay.
She only says one thing.
I mean, true, but like even still though, it's been down there for like 2,000 years in this cave, because they go to this cave that Cornelius was digging up, and they go back out there to try and sort of prove that there was this civilization. And I think if you didn't get the twist ending before, I think when we start seeing things and Taylor starts saying, "Oh, this is a pair of glasses. This is a pacemaker. This is a what else the other thing it brings up? False teeth.
Fake teeth. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, this is starting to feel really odd. But I do love the moment though. As much as it's a little bit silly that this doll still works, I do love that because Zaius is like, no, like, my grandchildren play with human dolls. That's just a normal thing. But then, of course, it says mummy, and it's like, hey, would an ape build a doll that could talk? And of course, after this, he just wants to burn it all, or cave it in, I suppose is more accurate. But he just wants to erase it. He just wants to wipe any evidence of its existence and have everyone go back to living the lie, because that's what he sees as being safe.
And he's sort of, in a way, like, convinces Cornelius and Zia, what's her name?
Zira.
That is
it might be Zyra, admittedly, but I would pronounce that Zira based on the text.
I think you're right. I think it's Zira. I think they understand why, at least, to a point. Like they don't think it's the right thing to do, but they understand why he thinks it's the right thing to do.
This is where, no, admittedly, there's no necessarily a sense of humans being eaten in this, but I still think this is maybe where your vegan sensibilities kind of come into it. This idea that, well, we can't let everyone know that humans may actually be smart, because then they might complain that we're lobotomizing them and sticking them in museums and doing all this other nasty shit to them.
Experimenting. Yeah.
So I think there's that element to it as well, which also, there's very little about this ending that's actually happy or hopeful. Everything about it is like,
oh no, yeah,
like, because when we end with Cornelius and Zira, they're going back to be put on trial for helping Taylor and for this blasphemous like theory of his, and then Taylor finds the Statue of Liberty and realizes that his home is screwed, like, and because he was so flippant at the start of the movie where he's like, oh, everything you and you land, and it's all been dead for 2,000 years, it's all dust, and he's so flippant and clearly doesn't give a shit about it. But then you get to the end of the movie, and holy boy, does he care! Like, he's like absolutely. Like, I think it's like seeing like what he saw as a primitive species, like being better and higher up in the food chain and all the rest of it, and in this society and being treated the way he is. I think the idea that, okay, at least I know my Earth, my civilization was much more advanced and it was better, and it probably prospered long after I was gone, and then finding this and finding out that probably
just the sheer devastation and anger and and humility
and probably relatively soon after he left as well, assuming it's still the Cold War and all the other stuff. Well, I mean, it's set a little bit in the future, I think, when they leave. I can't remember what date it said in the ship at the start.
I think it's 72 or something. Like, it's not that far in the future.
No, but I think that's why the ending works so well. It recontextualizes what the movie's kind of been saying up until that point about just about everything it's been talking about. And it does all kind of click together because it kind of recontextualizes his view on Earth and the human race and how they messed up, and then what the apes are going through, and the idea that the apes inevitably might get to that point too. But maybe they're better off without a human being that's like this influencing them, because clearly it didn't do us any good.
Yep, we are not the example, turns out.
Yeah, I mean, there's maybe hope yet. I don't know.
I love the ending. I think for all the reasons that you stated, and I think the movie, if you've only watched it once, like, I think it deserves a rewatch when you know the ending, if you didn't already know going in, which would be unfortunate. But
yes, all dozen of you who managed to watch this in the last 10 years without knowing what the ending was, watch it again.
Hey, I see like people, like uncles and stuff, post videos on YouTube of kids like finding out about Darth Vader in Empire.
That's true. Well,
and their reaction and stuff, and put it on YouTube, and it's wonderful. Like they clearly didn't know when they're like 10.
I mean, obviously, yes, there's us movie nerds who, if we have kids, will make a point of getting to them quickly.
All the Planet of the Apes movies.
Yeah, but you do it early enough that they're like, okay, I know they've not been influenced yet, and they've not seen any spoilers. Like, so you know what? I'm just going to show you Sixth Sense at 7, just so you don't know what's going to happen at the end. Just buckle in.
Yeah, you gotta watch Planet of the Apes, Soylent Green, Star Wars, and Sixth Sense. I don't know if any others are. Maybe Psycho.
Star Wars can wait.
Psycho's a little early.
I'm going to intentionally show every single thing set in space that's not Star Wars before they see Star Wars, just so that Star Wars feels that But
that's like the right age to watch Star Wars.
No. You're going to watch Firefly.
Oh, your poor children.
How dare you? How dare you? I guess we're pretty much we're at ratings in terms of like the plot, but is there any other like themes or ideas you want to talk about, or any other actually there's one little touch I want to talk about in the camera work here at the end that I really love. I mean I love the way it reveals the Statue of Liberty, like seeing the spikes of the crown and all the rest of it, but basically the last thing that Zeus says to or not the last thing he says, sorry, but the last thing that they do is they blow up the cave, right? They cave it in. So that's the end of that scene. And it goes from the cave blowing up and crumbling and sort of like, okay, that's it, shut off forever. He's erased this. It cuts to a shot of the shore washing out and in. And it's just a simple little transition shot. Because you often talk about the shore, like, wiping things away and like, resurfacing and flat, So it's just a wonderful little, thematic transition that I love, the camera work.
I really think the movie looks like stunning. Like I love all the set pieces. I love it, it does look a lot like because everything's sort of the color of dirt. Like there's like a lot of the scenes do kind of blend together, but it's still a really beautiful film. Like I think it's shot very much like a Western, and like you're right, the reveals are dramatic and slow, and at first you're like, what is that? I'm not really sure what I'm looking at, and then it pans out to have the big reveal. Even when the apes first show up on horseback, you're like what it is because you're watching Planet of the Apes, but getting the first reveal of the ape is also very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when he like finds the like Landon, because they let him look at like the other humans that they've got, and he tries to talk to him, and Landon doesn't say it, and then he turns around and he's got this big giant like scar that they've operated on his head, and like he just flies for Zeus. He wants to kill him. He can't take this.
Yeah.
So we see him get broken down, and it's one of those things where it works that he's. Like, obviously, yes, he's Charlton Heston. That's why they cast him, because he is kind of that typical like hero for a Hollywood movie. But the character as written isn't really that, and I think it's one of the rare exceptions where having someone who isn't as likable necessarily as, because this would be a completely different movie if this was like a really sympathetic character that we really cared about and we really wanted to.
Yeah, if Landon was the one who survived, then it would be in a different film entirely, and I don't know if it would have been as good. Like, I like that Taylor really does represent like what we think of an American who is like full of himself, arrogant, but like maybe justifiably arrogant, and like he gets stuff done. Like, he's definitely the leader, you know, because other people have to listen to him, but they respect him, and you know he's got that like militaristic attitude. Like, he probably would make a great general.
But with the interesting caveat that he's essentially wanted to abandon Earth, and even the way he laughs when he sees...
he's still flawed, you know?
But what I mean is when you see him like laughing at the flag being planted, the little flag, and he just laughs it off, like, that's ridiculous, like, who cares now? Like, you know, like, I don't think he necessarily, like, because usually when you think of like typical American hero, they're very pro-American, and
well, sure, they would be more like Superman and stuff, but like, this is... He's more of a cowboy, I think. You know, he is like, I think John Wayne probably could have played Taylor.
What I mean is though is he's given up the idea of America. He doesn't care about it anymore. Like, that's what I'm saying is interesting. Like, Superman's a very different character, but this is like even this type of character, even your military man would be very pro America, be very, you know, stars and stripes and all the rest of it.
He's not like George Scott or something, like George C. Scott's character or anything like that. But
like he literally laughs off the idea of planting the flag. Like, it doesn't mean anything anymore. Why are you doing that?
Well, plus it's like the littlest flag.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But because he even says later on, you know, when he says, because they say, "Oh, can you take us out to where you land?" He's like, "You're not going to find much. You might find a little rubber dinghy, and you might find a little American flag," and he sort of like says what it is, but. Again, it's like he considers that nothing. Like, it's not worth finding, kind of thing. He's given up on his home world and his home country. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic for your main character in this, and it works. It's a sort of thing where you definitely have Twilight Zone episodes with characters who are unlikable, and I think Twilight Zone got away with it because they had a different story every week. They could try a bunch of different types of character. You know, they had likable characters, they had unlikable characters, they had...
Well, even the I Shot an Arrow into the Air episode, which, you know, is very much like this one. The guy that survives... Oh my god, am I frozen?
You are, yes.
How long have I been frozen like this?
Like about 20 seconds, 30 seconds.
Well, anyway, even in that episode, I Shot an Arrow into the Air, the astronaut that survives is not the one that is the leader and the one who like sees everybody as we need to save the weak and help them. Like, it's the one who steps over everybody.
Yeah, no, you're right.
The one who like would be willing to kill his fellow man in order to survive, and because that's the only thing that matters. And you know, not a likable guy at all, but the one who survives. So
yeah, and you know, Taylor's not as far gone as that. You know, he wasn't. You know, he still cared about his comrades, but he's definitely inching towards that kind of character for sure.
The things that were important to people who were, I don't want to say brainwashed, but like maybe patriotism. It doesn't really matter when you're on another planet.
Yeah. So no, I think the harsh ending and sort of like him realizing that humanity has failed and that all of his hubris is for nothing, it all means nothing, is it's like that's what finally really breaks him. No, it's not everything that happened before. It's this that really broke him. And you know, it's like he's proud of his freedom once he gets it, because he grabs a gun and he's like, I'm never going to be taken again. And you know, so he's at his highest moment because he thinks he's beat Zeus, he's tied Zeus, he's held him hostage, he's been given all this food and ammo to survive for a week.
He's outsmarted people, apes, outsmarted the apes and survived.
He's on top of the world, and then the ending just...
He's got the girl.
Crushes him. Yes.
Yeah.
Which was relatively easy in this movie. It was just, come with me, woman, and that was about
You're my mate now.
Yes. So... that's probably what drew Heston to this character. He probably read that in the script and went, "Yep, I relate to this character." Yes.
I think Heston probably respected women a little bit more, but I don't know. Maybe I just want to think that.
Probably just want to think that. So
I heard that they actually had multiple endings for this movie written out, and Charlton Heston is the one who chose the darkest ending because he liked it the best.
Hey, if you like it the best, you like it the best. It is interesting given his life and who he was in the real world. It's interesting all of the messages this movie's actually kind of imparting along with that. I guess some of the ideas of being able to fight back does appeal to him, given people who are heavy into the NRA. One of their big things is often that well, we can always fight back if the government ever there's that whole thing.
A militia, yeah.
So maybe that's maybe he read it differently. He took something different from it than the rest of the world did. But
I think it's interesting that the movie had a different ending at all, because I mean, so many of these themes work because of the ending.
I'll be honest, it depends. I mean, I don't know what the different endings were, but changing the ending might actually retroactively make the rest of the movie not work that well. You might get to the end and be like,
so much of everything is about like this works so well because of the ending. Like that's why I think it's really rewatchable.
Yeah, because everything. Well, works in two ways. There's so much teasing about this past civilization in a pure plot sense, but then there's all the stuff of like, okay, it's all about civilization and who has power, who doesn't, and the hubris specifically, and all of that comes crashing down at the end. If you don't have that at the end, then all of that build up to it would feel like it was a waste, potentially.
It's like the Ozymandias poem, which I only know because of Watchmen, was the look upon my works, ye mighty, in despair. It's the just an ancient relic of a city that doesn't exist anymore. It was like, somebody had a lot of power once and was very proud of what they accomplished, and now it's just a desert.
Yeah, that's nothing. Yeah, or in the case of this movie, now it's just a crater where several nuclear bombs went off, presumably. Because
except for maybe one.
What a tease for the next one, for Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Yes, I will admit, I maybe because I grew up with these films, like they get real campy and real hokey, and the ape masks get real bad with each subsequent sequel. But they do hold a special place in my heart. So I'm really excited to work through the franchise. I'm really glad that the Patreons voted for Apes.
The Patreons.
Yes.
I will say this as well. The second movie has another type of character that it has to do makeup on. So look forward to that. I'll just say there's some characters that feel like they belong on like a B tier Star Trek episode, and we'll just leave it there. Maybe C tier, maybe B tier's being too generous. So that's that's basically the movie. I'm sure there's several facets that we could even go into further, but I think we'll leave it there so we're not here for ever. But let's rate the movie then. What are you going to give Planet of the Apes?
Well, it's kind of a hard one. No, it's not. It's a 10. I love this movie. This movie is the epitome of great sci-fi. It's definitely, has some things that are a product of its time. I don't really care. I love it. I think this is a perfect allegory and wonderful, design work and a vision of a post-apocalyptic future for us. I love this film.
Okay, even calling it post-apocalyptic is actually a spoiler in a way. I'm not going to give it a 10. I think it's great. I think it's a special piece of cinema. It really encapsulates a change in both the world and Hollywood and all these things. It's got so many themes to dive into, so much subtext to kind of relish in and talk about all the science fiction ideas. It's not surprising that we compare it to Twilight Zone, not just because of Rod Serling's involvement, but you can also compare it to Star Trek. Like, how many Star Trek episodes are about finding civilizations and cultures that are either more advanced or less advanced, and how they treat Kirk and crew and so on. It, like a lot of science fiction that we're bringing up here, it provokes ideas. It makes you think. It challenges the ideas and the flaws and like what makes humans humans. The fact that half the characters, or more than half the characters in this case, are apes, is just nothing but a science fiction metaphor for human beings. All of it's always about humans. And yeah, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's kind of what I've given it the last few times I've seen it, and I'm still going to give it that. And partly because there is room for improvement, and we'll get there much later in the series. So I'll leave that there. Let's just say I think very highly of some of the recent ones. So
I think they know which one.
I think they do. So yeah, so that is Planet of the Apes. So yes, very good. So I'll tell you what's coming next time on the show. Next time we will be doing a Minority Report. So look out for that episode next week. But yeah, so let us know what you think of Planet of the Apes in the comments below. Oh, we have one quick new section actually at the end here. I almost forgot. So Tara, make sure your head's not cut off when you do this at the top of the frame.
Okay.
Right, so lean back. So this is just a quick little, couple second bonus for the video people. Tara's going to do her pose for the thumbnail. So I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1 and say pose, and then she's going to pose. And all you have to do, Tara, is hold it for at least a second so that there's no blurring of motion. All right, so okay. 3, 2, 1, pose. This is only the second time we've done the pose segment, and I am actually almost embarrassed that it only took 2 tries before she did the hands on the face scream pose, which you knew was going to come eventually, but
it's got to come for Planet of the Apes.
For the twist ending, yes, I get it.
I mean, it's a surprise. It's a horror film in a way. It's I mean, technically we're not dealing with aliens, but for most of the movie, you think you are.
I guess technically, I never really think about it. I guess because they just look like apes and humans, even though technically it may be on our planet in theory. But
well, I mean, so many movies and TV shows at that time would be like, here are aliens. They're just like us, but they have they live in rock caves and wear weird sparkly outfits and I don't know
stuff. Yes.
Yeah. They play with theremins a lot.
Or have big giant heads.
Ah. Yeah.
Let us know what you think of Planet of the Apes in the comments. Please do like on YouTube. Liking is important. It lets YouTube know that you think we're worth recommending out, and it will do so. So please do that. We mentioned Patreon earlier, of course. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. So support us over there for as little as $1 per month, and of course get us on Twitter at the Ace Podcast for random updates. Occasionally, I've started posting clips occasionally on there as well, for some variation in content. Get the social media game improving, I guess. Tara, would you like to promote any other piece of MailFuzz TV content that you would recommend?
Well, we've already talked about Twilight Zone and Star Trek. So I guess if you like these types of reviews, then you'll probably enjoy Screams After Midnight, which is just this format but with Tim instead of Tara. So kind of a step down, but we have different tastes and things.
Yes. Well, I mean, we just reviewed a film that got an average between us of 9.5. The last review that I recorded with Tim got an average of 2 out of 10. So if you want to see me and Tim review some absolute trash, and that was a movie from this year, might I add.
Ooh.
Had one of the worst endings I've ever seen.
Is it the island one?
No, I haven't done that yet. No.
Oh, okay.
No. The movie in question is The Turning.
Oh. Okay.
Really, really bad. That's all I'm saying. The only ending that's worse than this, and I've not seen this movie, but there's a movie, I think it's called The Devil Inside, where the ending of the movie is literally a black screen with a website address.
I've seen that.
You saw it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It tells you to go and look up the website for the ending.
What the hell?
Yeah. Who
Did
thought
you just run out of money? Or...
Well, what's so strange about that to me is that movies don't get shot in order. So if you did run out of money, then it wouldn't I mean, the fact that it's the ending that's missing is really coincidental, if that's the case.
Yeah, I rented it off of Redbox because I thought I'll watch a possession movie. I don't know, like, see what it's like. And it was terrible.
Yeah. Well, no, they're not in streams yet, but we'll have to someday because, you know, our audience likes us to suffer. So.
Movies that are incomplete.
Yeah, well, I mean, we reviewed the Boy. So, I guess we do. There's precedent.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they forgot to write a script for that movie, you see, so it was definitely incomplete. Yes, we've done movies such as Rumpelstiltskin and at least 4 Leprechaun movies so far. So go check out Streams After Midnight.
Solid saga.
Don't call that saga. I know why you like those movies. It's because in the 4th one that's set in space, there's a 2001 reference where he's like a star child coming towards the ship. That is the only reason why you like that franchise. I'm calling it right now.
Yeah. It's the reason I say bless you after someone sneezes 3 times.
Alright. That is us, guys. That is us, guys. Thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer. I know what Tower's going to say in a second. Add salsa.
I hate every ape I see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee.